Well, earlier we heard about e-transport in cities, but what about mobility in general? How will we travel and where will we get the energy to do that from in a sustainable way? I'm very happy to introduce now Auke Hoekstra. He is the thought leader when it comes to electric vehicles and the switch to renewable energies. He's been debunking scare stories about both for years. Auke is the director of NEON at the Eindhoven University of Technology and founder of ZenMo Simulations, where he develops solutions for sustainable future mobility. When will we be an electric society? Welcome, Auke.
Thank you very much, and nice stage you have there. Okay, you just heard the introduction. Very quickly, this is the company. I started with a couple of professors, so we make those models to really see where we're going, and now I can tell you about it. I also started a large initiative at the Technical University of Eindhoven, so there's basically 35 of us who try to peer into the future and see where we get everything. I also take it seriously personally. So I have a beautiful house to live in. And let's start to talk with solar panels. Because actually, solar panels are not a new invention. They were discovered at least in 1905, Einstein discovered how they work. That's actually why he got his Nobel Prize, not for relativity. And back then, people already saw the possibilities. I mean, this is incredible, right? That in 1910, somebody said, Thomas Edison no less, let's get going with solar panels. I discovered in 2007, almost a century later, and the predictions I did then as a novice in the field are still pretty much on track. So I'm kind of proud of this. That's why I show it. And I also started to make models, basically comparing, or not models then, simple Excel sheets, comparing how the big organizations that predicted this future were doing relative to reality. So the black line is reality, the amount of solar panels sold. In this case, as you see, reality is steeply increasing, largely thanks to the enormous incentives in Germany that really helped the global industry in solar panels along. And all the horizontal lines are the predictions of the most important agency that looks at the energy future, International Energy Agency. As you can see, not a lot of people saw solar panels coming back then. I was always fascinated by solar panels, and especially electric vehicles, because we use the amount of earth we have much more efficiently. I think on this little blue dot that we all live on, that the earth is actually our scarcest resource. So how can we use that most efficiently? And what you see in this slide is that a solar panel uses 20% of the energy that the sun gives us. And then in the end, you are left with about 14% of the energy that the sun gives us for a square meter. On the bottom side, you see what happens if you use biofuels. I mean, I was always convinced that we had to go low CO2, but biofuels clearly weren't the solution. Also, by the way, because this is real. Biofuels mean you cannot do nature or food with your land. And solar panels, well, that doesn't need like 50% of the Earth's surface like we do now for agriculture. No, that only needs very little space. So I became sort of convinced that this was a future and that not everybody was seeing it yet. Wrote a couple of books in Dutch, unfortunately, on electric vehicles and where they get their energy in 2008 and 2009. And now I can tell you about it. I make simulations like this. So we really make neighborhoods with cars that drive around in it. And then we look at, for example, how those cars interact with the energy system. So we base this all on good Dutch data about mobility. And then we look at the interactions with the energy system. And then, for example, we can see that a vehicle to grid, something you may have heard of. So when the vehicle charges back to the grid, that has an enormous influence. So smart charging, as we call it, that means that cars don't start charging the moment you plug in, but they start charging at the time when it's cheapest for you and best for the grid operator, and you use as much solar and wind as possible. That's what you see at the top of the screen. That already takes basically all the problems caused by electric vehicles away from the grid and leads to increased use of solar and wind. But on the bottom you see that if you do vehicle to grid, whoa, your battery becomes a very powerful instrument in the smart grid you might just have heard about from my previous speaker. So we also look at how much money this makes you, and the whole, as we call it, merit order. So this is kind of complicated, which is why there's a lot of people working on it. But you can really predict and see that electric vehicles and renewable energy are enormously strongly reinforcing each other. This is then the sort of simulations I love to show, because I think in order for more people to understand this whole enormous shift we're going through, we have to make interactive dashboards. And for example, in this little movie you see on the right, that we just put in some solar panels and we get enormous peaks in solar. That's the red peaks on the right. But with smart charging and home batteries, and now you see, if you can see it, that hydrogen is being activated, we can manage that. So it's enormously empowering for decision makers to play games with these kind of simulations and to see what the future looks like. Okay, but why electric vehicles? What's so great about electric vehicles? Well, the biggest advantage they have, of course, is the motor. I mean, I know a lot of, for example, German people are very proud of the combustion engines they make, and they are works of art and they are incredible feats of engineering. But unfortunately, they're never going to compete with electric engines. Electric engines are so much better in almost every way, as you've probably seen on the slide by now. I don't repeat slides. I think you can read probably faster than I can speak, so please also look at the slides a bit. What's also interesting, a lot of people don't know this, is that we have many also very efficient new electric motors that can do without scarce earth metals. Now, scarce earth metals, as you know, is probably just a name. They're not really scarce, but still nice to be able to avoid them. And this is always a nice example to give, because a lot of people, well, I think still a lot of people, but it's decreasing, of course, think that electric vehicles are, slow, short distance, problematic, basically not fun vehicles. Well, here you see a family car that's pretty expensive, but still not as expensive as the sports vehicle on the left. And still, the newest version of this beats the sports vehicle on the track, is super fast, much faster from 0 to 100. Basically, with electric, you can have your cake and eat it too. And more importantly, when you have such a souped up, overdone, because I think it's nonsense, electric vehicle, your energy use hardly increases. That's very, very different from the energy use of this very frugal Porsche sports car on the left. So electric vehicles will be fun. And then I made a little calculation how much the battery, because that's of course a problem, how much the battery would weigh from a Tesla, the one you just saw, actually a smaller battery, in a little bit smaller, in 1900. You would have taken an elephant worth of battery with you. But it changed quickly. And right now, well, you're left with, I would say, almost left with a pig. And the pig is still heavy to take with you, but here's the good news. The electric drivetrain is much lighter than the combustion drivetrain. And if you take everything into account, then my prediction is that by 2025, electric vehicles will be lighter than combustion engine vehicles. And of course, these numbers are just to give an impression, but still. Okay, and then the most important thing, of course, at least for us Dutch people, because we look at costs a lot. And when I started this, actually I take the year 2000 here, it was incredibly expensive to make an electric vehicle. Incredibly expensive. That's what you see when you see battery and 100K. That's how expensive this battery was. You couldn't possibly make a good sell an electric vehicle that way. But if I extrapolate towards 2030, then by that time the drivetrain will be much cheaper, and the battery will be very cheap, which means that all the energy you save, because you lose 4 times less energy, all the energy you save and all the maintenance you save makes it very hard to tell people they should not take an electric vehicle. It's simply the advantage in terms of cost of the electric vehicle will be too big. So I also made some forecasts for the Netherlands, and for the Netherlands I think that about 90% or 80%, that's the red line in this picture, about 80% or 90% of sales in 2030 will be electric. Worldwide, a lot less, maybe 50% or something, but it's going fast. Then hydrogen vehicles, I just want to show this. This was the prediction for 2020 and 2004. This is what happened. So a lot of people put too much hope in it, I think. Then something I really want to stress now is trucks. Trucks emit like half of, emit like 3/5 or something, a little bit more even, of what cars emit. And half of that again is for one type of truck, and that's the big 18-wheeler. So I thought, wow, if we could get those 18-wheelers to become electric, that would be nice. So in 2017, the EA came out with a new report, the International Energy Agency, the one I told you about that sort of misjudged solar a little bit. Then they're coming around now, by the way. And I saw that electric trucks were completely missing from their forecast. So I thought, while I was on vacation, I had some time on my hands, let's change that. And I found that battery electric vehicles were actually going to be pretty soon cheaper than diesel vehicles. Same thing basically as with normal cars. So really no different. And I've reviewed a couple of papers now of other authors saying this too, so I'm not alone anymore. But this is big news, I think. And we also did some simulations. For example, this one is around London for a large transporter there. We also looked at Rotterdam. And what you see is if you take fleet characteristics into account, meaning that you know in advance how far every truck you have is going to travel, and you can sort of optimize your battery electric trucks to your routes, and then the rest you do with diesel, for example, then about 80% or something of your routes can very, very easily become electrified pretty soon. Now, and again here, very quickly, I will just show you how the battery improved. So in 2000, people were right. It wouldn't work, long-haul electric trucks. This is what you had to take with you, a couple of elephants, a couple of rhinoceros, and this day, doesn't matter. Wouldn't work. But the nickel metal hydride battery changed a lot. And then you got the lithium iron phosphate battery, changed a lot. And then you got the new NCA and NCM batteries, changed a lot. So I think pretty soon we'll be at 0 extra. And mind you, those trucks in Europe can weigh 2 tons extra, no penalty. And by the way, most trucks are actually volume constrained, not weight constrained. So no reason on that front to be scared. This is possible, by the way, because batteries last so much longer. A lot of people talk about how much batteries get cheaper and get lighter, but not enough people talk about how much longer they last, and that is super important. So I wrote about it recently, I think a year ago or something, and in all kind of venues that I never knew existed. And I'm trying to convey to as many people as possible that there's a tremendous amount of CO2 to be saved if we also electrify big trucks. Fortunately, the ICCT is also doing very thorough studies showing that it can be done throughout Europe. So I just did an experiment for London and for Rotterdam. They looked at the entirety of Europe, and it works. And VW subsidiaries are also, like Scania and MAN, are also saying we're going all in. And I've talked to them. This is not just marketing speak. They finally did the numbers, and they are convinced. So, is this the future? I don't think so. I don't think the future is electric vehicles and big battery electric trucks. I think these are enormous steps ahead in our fight against climate change, but we don't want cities like this. We don't want cities like this. We don't want these kinds of things running loose in our cities. We don't want vehicles where this is about the amount of children you can't see when you sit in it. I mean, just take a step back. Imagine you're an alien from the outside world. Would you think this is normal? I think not. I think we somehow have this idea that more cars is freedom, but it's nonsense. I think this is a much more logical way to want to live. Or this. And that electric trucks in cities will be replaced by these kind of buggers. Very, very small vehicles that are fun to use for kids and not dangerous at all. Little cars like this that you can park by the side, or like this that you can even turn on the side so it takes less than 1 square meter. And of course this to keep moving a little bit. Then we can have streets like this, or this, or this. So I think our electric future will contain almost no combustion engines, but we will have cities like this. And this is the kind of mobility we will organize around. That was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Auke, for your insights. With electric, you can have your cake and eat it too. That is my takeaway. I thank you very much for being with us today.